The waves crashed against the shore with a ferocity that belied the stillness of the night. Each wave seemed to carry with it a hidden story, a secret waiting to be uncovered. The rhythmic pounding of the ocean was both a lullaby and a warning, a reminder of the power and mystery that lay beneath its surface. The salty air hung heavy, thick with the smell of seaweed and secrets. It was as if the very atmosphere was saturated with the whispers of the past, tales of love and loss, of joy and sorrow, all mingling together in the cool night air. The mist clung to everything, wrapping the beach in a shroud of mystery. A lone figure walked along the beach, the sand cool and damp beneath her bare feet. Each step she took left a fleeting imprint, quickly erased by the encroaching tide. She moved with a sense of purpose, yet there was an air of melancholy about her, as if she was searching for something lost to the sands of time. The moon, a sliver in the sky, provided little light, casting long, dancing shadows that whispered tales of forgotten tragedies. Its pale glow was just enough to illuminate the path ahead, but not enough to dispel the darkness that seemed to press in from all sides. The shadows moved and shifted, creating an eerie ballet that played out on the sand. Porbandar Beach, known for its beauty, held an undercurrent of unease that night. The usual serenity of the place was replaced by a sense of foreboding, as if the beach itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. The beauty of the landscape was undeniable, but it was a beauty tinged with danger, like a rose with hidden thorns. The wind howled like a banshee, carrying with it the faint scent of jasmine and the echo of a name whispered on the breeze. It was a sound that sent shivers down her spine, a reminder that she was not alone. The scent of jasmine was out of place, a fragrant anomaly in the salty air, adding to the surreal quality of the night. Sonal, her heart pounding in her chest, stopped and turned, her eyes searching the darkness. She strained to see through the mist, hoping to catch a glimpse of whatever or whoever was out there. Her breath came in short, sharp gasps, each one a testament to the fear that was slowly taking hold of her. There was nothing there, just the relentless crashing of the waves and the unsettling feeling that she was not alone. The beach, usually a place of solace and peace, now felt like a trap, its vastness closing in on her. She could feel the weight of the night pressing down on her, making it hard to breathe. She continued walking, her pace quickening. Each step was a desperate attempt to escape the invisible presence that seemed to follow her. The faster she walked, the louder the whispers became, as if they were urging her to run, to flee from whatever danger lurked in the shadows. She could feel the hairs on the back of her neck prickling with a strange awareness. It was a sensation she couldn't shake, a feeling that something or someone was watching her. Her instinct screamed at her to leave, to get as far away from the beach as possible, but her curiosity kept her rooted to the spot. The whispers on the wind seemed to grow louder, swirling around her like phantoms. They were indistinct, just on the edge of hearing, but they carried a sense of urgency, a warning that she couldn't ignore. She tried to make out the words, to understand what they were trying to tell her, but they remained elusive, like shadows in the mist. Fear, cold and clammy, tightened its grip on her heart. It was a fear that went beyond the rational, a primal terror that spoke to the deepest parts of her soul. She could feel it spreading through her, making her limbs heavy and her mind foggy. Every instinct told her to run, but she was frozen in place, trapped by her own fear. She just wanted to get home, to the safety of her room, away from the oppressive darkness of the beach. The thought of her warm bed, of the familiar walls of her home, was a beacon of hope in the overwhelming darkness. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the journey ahead, and began to walk, each step taking her closer to safety and further from the whispers in the wind. Sonal lived a simple life in the bustling coastal town of Porbandar, where the sea met the land. Her days were filled with the vibrant colours and lively sounds of her hometown, a symphony of life. She helped her mother at their small shop, the air thick with the aroma of spices and incense, a comforting blend. She laughed with her friends, their bangles jingling as they shared stories and dreams. Life was familiar, comforting and full of warmth. Sonal knew the rhythm of the waves, the scent of the sea air, the warmth of the sun on her skin, and the cool breeze at night. She found solace in the familiar, in the routine of her days, a routine that brought her peace. She never sought out the extraordinary, never wished for anything more than the simple joys her life offered, content in her world. But fate, it seemed, had other plans, plans that would change everything. The night on the beach, the night she could not shake the feeling of being watched, marked a turning point in her life. The whispers on the wind, the unease that clung to her like a shroud, foreshadowed a darkness that was about to seep into her life, shattering the tranquility of her world forever. The fog rolled in thick and fast, like a living entity creeping over the sands, swallowing everything in its path. It blanketed the beach in an eerie silence, muting the sound of the waves crashing against the shore and the distant calls of nocturnal creatures. Sonal, her heart pounding in her chest like a drum, strained to see through the swirling mist. The dense fog seemed to play tricks on her eyes, making shadows dance and shift in the periphery of her vision. The air grew heavy, thick with a strange energy that made it difficult to breathe. It was as if the fog carried with it an ancient, otherworldly presence, pressing down on her chest and making her breaths shallow and quick. She could feel her senses heightened, every nerve ending on high alert. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up, and a chill ran down her spine despite the humid air. And then she saw it. A shadowy figure emerging from the mist, its form barely discernible against the swirling backdrop. A figure, shrouded in the swirling mist, standing at the water's edge. It seemed to be waiting, watching, its presence both unsettling and magnetic. It was tall and slender, with long dark hair that flowed in the wind like seaweed caught in a current. The figure's movements were slow and deliberate, almost graceful. Sonal couldn't make out its face, obscured as it was by the fog and the shadows. The figure's features seemed to shift and blur, never quite coming into focus. Fear, sharp and cold, shot through her. It was a primal fear, one that gripped her heart and refused to let go. She wanted to run, to scream, but her feet felt rooted to the spot. It was as if the sand beneath her had turned to quicksand, holding her in place. She watched, mesmerized and terrified, as the figure slowly turned towards her. The movement was almost hypnotic, drawing her in despite the fear that coursed through her veins. The fog seemed to part slightly, revealing a glimpse of a face, pale and ethereal, with eyes that glowed with an otherworldly light. The eyes seemed to pierce through the fog, locking onto hers with an intensity that made her shiver. And then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the figure vanished, swallowed whole by the swirling mist. The fog closed in around the spot where it had stood, leaving no trace of its presence. Sonal was left standing alone on the beach, her heart still racing and her mind reeling from what she had just witnessed. The silence returned, even more oppressive than before, as if the fog itself was holding its breath. She took a tentative step forward, her eyes scanning the mist for any sign of the figure, but there was nothing. The beach was empty, the only sound the distant crash of the waves. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, that the figure was still out there, hidden in the fog, waiting. The night seemed to stretch on endlessly, the fog thickening around her, and she knew that she would never forget the figure in the fog. The face in the fog haunted Sonal's dreams, its ethereal glow seared into her mind. Every night, as she drifted into the realm of sleep, the same vision would emerge from the depths of her subconscious. It was as if the fog itself was alive, swirling and coalescing into a visage that was both familiar and terrifying. The glow from the face was not just a light, it was a beacon of dread, pulling her deeper into a nightmare she couldn't wake from. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had seen something unnatural, something that defied explanation. It wasn't just a fleeting glimpse, it was a profound sense of otherworldliness that lingered long after she had woken up. The shadows seemed to move with a life of their own, and the fog felt like it was whispering secrets that were never meant for human ears. Each day, the memory of that night on the beach grew more vivid, more real, as if the boundary between her dreams and reality was slowly eroding. Her reflection in the mirror, once a source of comfort and familiarity, now filled her with dread. The mirror had always been a place where she could see herself clearly, where she could find solace in her own image. But now, it was a portal to her deepest fears. Every time she looked into it, She half expected to see the ghostly face staring back at her, mocking her with its silent presence. The dread was not just in her mind, it was in her bones, a cold, creeping sensation that left her feeling hollow and alone. Because the face in the fog, the face that haunted her every waking moment, was her own. It was a twisted, spectral version of herself, a doppelganger that seemed to exist in a parallel world of shadows and mist. This ghostly twin was not just a figment of her imagination, it was a manifestation of her deepest fears and insecurities. It was as if her very soul had been split in two, with one half trapped in a nightmare from which there was no escape. Or rather, it was a ghostly doppelganger, a spectral twin that seemed to exist just beyond the veil of reality. This doppelganger was always there, lurking in the periphery of her vision, a constant reminder of the terror that had taken root in her heart. It was as if the veil between the worlds had been torn, allowing this otherworldly presence to seep into her life. The more she tried to ignore it, the stronger it became, feeding off her fear and growing more real with each passing day. It appeared to her in reflections, in shadows, in the flickering candlelight. No matter where she went, no matter how much she tried to escape, it was always there, watching her with eyes that seemed to pierce through her very soul. The flickering candlelight, once a source of warmth and comfort, now cast eerie shadows that danced and twisted into grotesque shapes. Each flicker seemed to bring the ghostly figure closer, until it felt like it was standing right beside her, breathing down her neck. Always watching, always present, a constant reminder of the terror she had witnessed on the beach that night. The beach, once a place of joy and relaxation, had become a scene of horror that she could never forget. The waves that had once lulled her into a sense of peace now seemed to whisper her name, calling her back to the place where her nightmare had begun. The ghostly presence was a shadow that she could never escape, a dark cloud that hung over her every moment. Her family, initially dismissive of her claims, began to worry. They had always known Sonal to be a rational, level-headed person, but now she seemed to be slipping away from them. Her once bright eyes were now clouded with fear, and her laughter, which had always been a source of joy for them, was now a distant memory. They tried to comfort her, to bring her back to the person she used to be, but nothing seemed to work. The more they tried to help, the more she withdrew into herself, lost in a world of shadows and fear. Sonal, once vibrant and full of life, withdrew into herself, her laughter silenced, her eyes filled with a haunting fear. She had always been the life of the party, the one who could light up a room with her smile. But now, she was a shadow of her former self, a ghost walking through the motions of her life. Her friends and family watched helplessly as she slipped further and further away, unable to reach her through the thick fog of fear that surrounded her. The girl who had found joy in the simple things, who had drawn strength from the familiar, was lost in a labyrinth of fear and uncertainty, tormented by a vision she could not escape. The labyrinth was not just in her mind. It was in her heart, a twisting, turning maze of emotions that left her feeling lost and alone. Each turn brought her face to face with her deepest fears, and no matter how hard she tried to find her way out, she always ended up back where she started, trapped in a nightmare from which there was no escape.